Good evening, everyone, and welcome to First Parish in Concord for this Maundy Thursday service. Our call to worship tonight are words from the gospel attributed to Mark. Mark is the earliest of the four gospels and one written for a Jewish audience. This is Mark 14, 12 through 16. On the first day of Passover, Jesus' disciples asked him, "Where do you want us to go and make preparation so you can eat the Passover meal?" He directed two of his disciples, "Go into the city. A man carrying a water jug will meet you. Follow him. Ask the owner of whichever house he enters. The teacher wants to know, where is my guest room where I can eat the Passover meal with my disciples? He will show you a spacious second-story room, swept and ready. Prepare for us there." The disciples left, came to the city, found everything just as he had told them, and prepared the Passover meal. Let us worship together.
Please join together in singing hymn number 1, "May Nothing Evil Cross This Door," and let us rise as we sing.
Please remain standing as we light our chalice together. This chalice, the symbol of our faith, harkens back to our Christian ancestors, and some of us here Christian Unitarian Universalists. This heritage of stories passed down through so many generations lights our way this week. Let us join in the chalice lighting response. The words are printed in your order of service, and for folks online, they are on a slide. With faith to face our challenges, with love that casts out fear, with hope to trust tomorrow, we accept this day as the gift it is, a reason for rejoicing.
Please be seated. I want to welcome all of you here tonight for this Maundy Thursday service, and especially welcome any who are watching from home. We hope that you enjoy this hour and that it is an hour of contemplation and prayer, of music and words, of silence and memory. We all gather here this evening from different places. Some of us were raised in the Christian tradition and may still hold that as our chief faith anchor to this day. Others of us were raised in other religious traditions or no religious tradition at all. The thing we know that brings us together is that we are Unitarian Universalists, and we are gathered at First Parish in Concord on this particular evening to commemorate this particular old story. I want to invite you to come into this story with an open heart and with an open mind. Participate in it as fully as you would like to, and know that there is room for you in this story. I want to make a note about the communion table here at First Parish in Concord, and of course in any UU church, is completely open. It does not matter what you believe. If you are compelled by this story and wish to take communion tonight, you're absolutely welcome to do that. It is simply a remembrance of the supper that Jesus had with his followers, and we make no more of a big deal about it than that. And so I invite you to partake in the communion when it comes time to do that, if you would like to do that. We have our wonderful communion silver set that goes back centuries, one of First Parish's most loved treasures, and I want to thank Doug Baker and Bruce Davidson for arranging it and getting it from the museum on loan tonight. Doug will be on hand after the service to talk to you about it, and I invite you to come up and to interact with it, to pick it up, to handle it, to look at it. It is your communion silver. It belongs to this congregation, so it is yours to handle and to enjoy. We are still taking some COVID precautions, so I really ask that you keep your mask on in the building, and that we'll social distance a little bit. Again, that's up to each of you. We also have the windows open for ventilation. We are getting through this pandemic together, and we know that there are ups and downs in the numbers, and our cooperation just keeps this whole community safe. So thank you for doing that. Again, welcome tonight to this Maundy Thursday service. Join us in this old story and find new meaning in your life from it.
We continue the story with the book of Mark, chapter 14, verses 17 to 21. After sunset, Jesus came with the 12 disciples. As they were at the supper table eating, he said, "I have something hard but important to say to you. One of you is going to hand me over to the conspirators, one who at this moment is eating with me." Stunned, they started asking one after another, "It isn't me, is it?" Jesus said, "It's one of the 12, one who eats with me out of the same bowl."
An important aspect of the Christian tradition is to realize that each of us has fallen short. Each of us has done things or failed to do things that we should have done or should not have done. And so therefore, in these services, there is a prayer of confession, and we will read that together, and then there will be a time of silence after it, in which we might lift up in silence our own deeds in which we wish to be forgiven. Will you please find in your order of service the prayer of confession and read along with me. O God, you invite us to root ourselves in your love and mercy. Instead, we chase the gods of money, prestige, convenience, and even our own egos. We hear your call to serve others, but this too impinges on our comforts and desires for ourselves. We have come to believe that there is not enough, and therefore must hold on to what we have, ever grasping for more. We have forgotten that all things come from you. In you there is more than enough. Forgive us our conceit, fear, and selfishness. Remind us that our lives find meaning in your presence and in service to others. Let us confess silently on our own. Let me assure you that you are forgiven. Simply asking is all that is needed. Simply recognizing something in your heart or your mind that needs to be corrected is all that is needed to be forgiven. You are forgiven. It is a new day. It is a new hour. Go forth and be fresh and new in this world. Please join in the words that Jesus taught his disciples, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
The translation of Ubi Caritas is, where charity and love abound, God is there.
Thank you so much to the choir. That was lovely. As we journey further into this story tonight, I'm going to lead us all in a guided meditation. Find a comfortable place for your body. Maybe sit up a little taller. Put both feet on the floor. If you're holding something in your hands, just set it gently to your side. Let your hands sit in your lap. Become aware of your breathing, the in and out of your breath. Let these words wash over you. Don't try to hold on to them. And don't worry that this will go on too long. It won't. Let us enter the story of Maundy, Thursday together. It has been a tumultuous few days, filled with highs and lows. You have been following Jesus for a couple of weeks, hearing him preach in the countryside. You have seen how his message resonates with the poor and the downtrodden. You have seen how his presence seems to heal people, seems to give them hope. Your life is no easier than your neighbor's, nor is it any harder. You know what it is like to live in an occupied land. Only your grandparents remember true freedom. The Caesar in Rome makes the decisions now. The Caesar in Rome levies heavy taxes on you and your neighbors. The Roman guards are everywhere, keeping the peace, they say, keeping control, you say. And you've seen how the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, deals with dissenters. You have seen the crucifixes. You know people who have been jailed. You know it is not safe to speak out. Yet you have been following this Jesus of Nazareth, inspired by his message, eager for his hope. And now he has led you all to Jerusalem. Just days ago, a merry parade. You entered the ancient city of Jerusalem with Jesus, following him all the way to the temple. The crowds waved palm branches and laid their cloaks on the road for his horse to walk on. There was music and dancing and laughter. For a moment, it felt like the old Jerusalem, the free Jerusalem. But the crowd's jubilation was fleeting. When Jesus' presence made the Roman authorities nervous, fear returned. Even those at the temple were not sure what to do with his words and his actions. And now it is Passover as well, the celebration of the Jewish Exodus, the celebration of Jewish freedom from slavery in Egypt. How can you hold such conflicting feelings? How do you celebrate freedom while experiencing repression everywhere? How do you stay true to your people and follow this new teacher? But Jesus is clear. He is brave. He wants to celebrate the Passover himself. He has not forgotten who he is. So you go with the others to a hidden upper room. You go as the sun is setting. You go to a gathering of friends in a secret place. The room is simple, yet comfortable. A dozen or so of you are there, glad to be away from the crush of the crowd, glad to be away from Rome's prying eyes. You all know to enjoy this time, for it will not last. And then your friend Jesus does and says some very strange things. He washes the feet of all gathered. He tells them not to fear. Then he says this alarming, mixed up thing about how you will not see him again. He interrupts the meal to talk about bread and wine, to make them symbols for his life and his blood. Nothing makes much sense at all. He says, one among you will betray him. This makes some of the others nervous, but not you. You aren't quite sure why you are here, but you know you're not a traitor. At least you're pretty certain you aren't. As the Passover meal goes on, you forget a bit about Jesus' strange words. You eat and drink with the rest of your friends. You worry about what will come next, especially for Jesus. You know it's not safe for him in Jerusalem. You know his words make the authorities mad. You know others have been put to death for less. Then your mind returns to the symbolism of this meal, this maybe Last Supper. What would it mean to remember Jesus every time you ate bread among friends? What would it mean to remember him every time you drank wine with those he loved? Would this be enough to keep you all together? Would this be enough to resist the evils of the world? Then the few precious hours are over. The Passover meal ends. Darkness has thickened over the city. The room's owner wants to lock up for the night. Together, you all sing one final song. And in the warmth of friendship, you all step out into the night. In the hope of better days, you leave the safety of the upper room to face the world. Now gently bring yourself back to this space. Softly open your eyes or lift your gaze.
We continue with the story from the Gospel of Mark, now chapter 14, verses 22 through 26. In the course of their meal, having taken and blessed the bread, Jesus broke it and gave it to them. Then he said, "Take, this is my body." Taking the chalice, he gave it to them, thanking God, and they all drank from it. He said, "This is my blood, God's new covenant, poured out for many people." Then Jesus said, "I'll not be drinking wine again until the new day, when I drink it in the kingdom of God." They all sang a hymn and then went directly to Mount Olives.
Very soon we will all partake together in this symbolic meal. And I want to let you know just a little bit about how it will work so that it happens fairly seamlessly. There will be bread to be eaten and grape juice to be drunk. And what will happen is that Liz will come down this aisle with each of the elements, and Beth will come down this aisle. I invite you to eat the bread individually, but then when we have little cups because we're in COVID times, so you have a little cup. When you get the cup, please just hold on to it until everyone has been served. and then we will all partake in the communion together. Let us sing together, and then we will celebrate this meal together.
I'm sorry, the hymn is number 406. Let us break bread together. You may stay seated.
The story tells us that Jesus was at supper with his disciples. They were someplace safe and warm. They had gathered, having traveled far and wide. I assure you, there were men and women at that table. I assure you, there were wealthy and there were poor at that table. I assure you that all of them were Jewish, and I assure you that they were following a new teacher who said some interesting, radical, dangerous things. So when they gathered at the table and he began talking about things to come, he took a loaf of bread, unleavened bread. It was the Passover after all. And he broke it in front of them. And he said, this bread is like my body. This is something you can do to remember me. When you eat bread with friends, do it remembering me. Likewise, he took some wine or some grape juice, who knows, and he said, this grape juice, it's like my blood. He said, whenever you drink together, whoops, I used my non-dominant hand. He would be amused at that. He said, whenever you gather with friends and you drink wine or you have a meal together, Lift a cup and remember me. And by doing this, our community will continue. I offer this cup and I offer this bread in the spirit of Jesus' life and teachings for the nourishment of all of us. Let us join in the communion together. invite those at home who are partaking of the communion and all of us here to partake of the cup together. You may just leave your little cups on the shelf in the pew and we'll gather them up.
Friends, will you pray with me, opening your hearts in the spirit of meditation? Dear God, we give thanks tonight for this blessing of bread and the fruit of the vine. We give thanks for old stories and traditions passed down through generations, for remembrances that bind us together, words that have brought comfort and encouragement, the will to keep going through each day and night. We give thanks tonight for our teacher, Jesus, who invited us to this sacred meal in his memory, who taught us to seek love and justice, to love our neighbors as ourselves, and fight for liberation. We give thanks tonight for the hope and renewal that live in us, for the love that you show us, the forgiveness that is ours, and the chance always to begin anew in charity and love. Amen. I invite you now in the pews to rise so that we may pass the peace with one another, but that we may begin tonight by passing. Come on and rise, y'all. And that we may begin tonight by turning around and passing the peace to our friends on Zoom with a wave, a hand over your heart, or a hearty hello. If you are on Zoom, I invite you to pass the peace with one another over the chat. And here in the room, let's turn and greet our neighbors across the aisles.
And as we finish greeting one another in peace, I invite you to grab a hymnal and turn to number 101, Abide With Me, which will be our closing hymn.
the warmth of this meal, the friendship that you have shared here, the peace and tranquility of this room. Carry them forward in your heart into your day tomorrow, and let all of your actions be done in love, and every one of your motivations be one of hope and of peace and of joy. Please join in the First Parish benediction, saying, "Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings." I invite you to be seated for the postlude, and then I also invite you to come up here and learn a little more about the silver. And I invite you to return tomorrow at 7:30 as well for the Good Friday service.
Calvinism. And Governor Winthrop said that we will be as a shining structure on a hill. The whole world will be looking at us. They kept 3 of the 7 sacraments of the Anglican and Catholic Church. They kept baptism, marriage, and communion. But they had very specific thoughts about how communion should be taken. In the very earliest meeting houses, there was a folding table up against the pulpit, and the deacons sat facing the entire congregation for the 4-hour service in the morning, then a 3 or 4-hour service in the afternoon. When it was time to do communion, they would lower that table, and rather than having people come up to a railing, as the Anglican and Catholic Church do, with secrecy behind the screen and so forth, they wanted the entire family to understand what was happening and partake in it. That's why they brought the communion bread and the wine to people in their pews. So, talking specifically about some of the pieces we have here, these 6 cups in the front are called caudle cups. And caudle was a drink of the 17th century in England, where people would take rice grain, wheat, whatever grain product they could have. They would mix it with water and wine, and sometimes even milk, and it was served hot, and that's why there are 2 handles. Why would they use that common household shape as a communion vessel in a meeting house? Well, the Puritans wanted to get away from the whole concept of using chalices, ornate, something simple, a common household shape that was used at that time in the 17th century, caudle cups, and that's why these 6 are that. The beakers we have and the 2 flagons were made by Samuel Bartlett in 1793, and it was through a gift from Dr. Cumming. The hospital part is now named after. He left 50 pounds, English pounds, that it was to be put into service, communion service. We know that Bartlett was in Concord for a couple of years, and he may well have actually made these pieces while he was living here in Concord. They do know that he lived over in the Pellet House right across the street, that large peach-colored gambrel roof building. So it's possible that they were made there. There's a mythology that has come down from April 19th, 1775, when the British regulars came to Concord, that somebody came into the meeting house, gathered up the communion silver, took it over to the Wright Tavern, and they threw it in a barrel of soap that had just been made in order to hide it from the British regulars as they came through and searched everything in town. But I since discovered that there are 2 stories about that. Isn't there always 2 stories about it? I think it was E.B. White said there are 3 histories: the history that is spoken, the history that is written, and the actual history that happened. And where is the truth in all of it? The second story is somebody by the name of Susanna Cogswell lived in what used to be called the White Block over here by the garage, and that she came into the meeting house, took the communion silver to her house, and put it in a barrel of soap to protect it. So there's really no way of knowing which was which. Some questions about the pieces. These caudle cups in the front were made by the silversmith John Coney in Boston. And some churches like to brag that they have pieces of communion silver made by Paul Revere. These 6 cups were made by the man who taught Paul Revere's father, silversmith. So there, yeah. There's an interesting history connected with this one caudle cup. I can't talk in word glasses with a mask at the same time, so I can't read. But on one of these here, I think that's it. I can't see which one it is. Anyway, it was given as a gift from Margaret Bridges, who lived in Finglas in Ireland in 1676. Very curious thing. Why would this person from Ireland give money to the Concord Church to be put into a piece of communion silver? We don't know that either. I tried to go online and go into Irish records, public records in Finglas, but you have to have authorization from an institution, a college, a research thing. That's the one there, okay. The date 1676 is probably not correct. John Coney would have only been 21 years of age, according to David Wood from the Concord Museum. But it was the time the money was given. It was later made into puddle. David also believes that if you take a particle accelerator and expose these cups to that, it'll probably show you that the silver is Spanish silver from South America and Mexico. And why would that have been? Well, there would have been a prolific amount of silver, Spanish coins, circulating in the early colonies. And England purposely kept the colonies starved for coinage because they thought they would take the coinage and buy products from other countries and other individuals. So in 1690, the Colonial Council got together and they made the Spanish mill dollar the coin of the colonies. So that existed actually until 1857. Spanish coins from South America were considered legal tender. So I don't have a spiel beyond that. I'll try and answer any questions you might have. Oh, John Coney. John Coney, every piece of silver that is made has a touch mark or a symbol for the silversmith who made it. And if you look on the bottom of this, the light's not good here, it's a little shield shape. And J in the Greek alphabet is written as I, the letter I. And you see IC, John Coney. And then, got a magnifying glass and good light. You could see at the bottom of his touch mark is a little rabbit. What is the word for a rabbit from Ireland? Coney. John Coney. And this print was of Margaret Bridges stuff again. Darian Hester. So, okay. We just don't know that much about Margaret Bridges, except whoever was working with John Coney at the time and was doing the engraving on the bottom, when they went to write Bridges, they used a small case letter for B, for Bridges. They came back and did a capital B over the top of it. So they made a correction. So these are your pieces of communion. Pick them up, examine them. Maybe use two hands.
So why would Coney have put two marks on this?
I don't know. Is it the same? I can't see it.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Yeah. Oh, actually, this one doesn't have a rabbit. This has more of a cross
I don't know.
or cactus. I guess it would be a cross.
Cactus. Okay. These came into it from John Cummings, 50 pounds. And all of these pieces of silver were hand hammered. You start with a flat piece of silver, usually circular. You have different shaped handles that you shape them on. And if you're looking inside, you can see the hammer marks still surviving. On the outside, they have been rubbed away intentionally. The flagons partially were hand raised, and they also parts of them were cast. For instance, the finial on top, and probably these handles were cast also. They would use probably an abrasive of some sort and polish it to remove the hammer marks. Yes, people would drink from them. Yeah, actually, we used to use the beakers more. Than that. Well, I'm pretty sure that it is. It's probably English sterling silver, which is 975 parts fine silver and 25 parts copper to give it a little strength. Yes, just beakers. Beakers is what they're called.